Hi, and welcome to Flying with Tom T. This is the first episode in what I hope will be a long and happy series about being a pilot, aircraft ownership, and the adventure that is flying. We'll be doing a fair amount of those scenic flights set to music and so on and so forth. We're also going to be doing segments on things related to aircraft ownership, what things cost, how long they take, maintenance schedules, things that should be in your flight bag, things that should be in the aircraft, rules and regs, and that sort of thing. So I'll be going through a fair amount of tips and tricks. This is also sort of an adventure for me in making videos. I've never done this before, and I'm doing my best here. But this is also going to be its own sort of behind the scenes, showing you what it takes to actually put cameras in aircraft and produce videos. I hope you enjoy the ride. I'm Tom Telford. You're flying with Tom T.
Fast idle. Master on. Mixture rich. Fuel pump. Crop area. Clear.
But first, we're going to have to go back a little in time. So this is my logbook. And this was the last day that I flew, March the 12th. Some time has passed since then. And this was my flight center where I was doing my night rating as well as renting. And there should have been nearly a dozen 172s sitting out there under normal circumstances. And here I am, sitting at home, not flying. What makes this worse for me right now is that I just started gathering the equipment to start making these videos. Not to mention relearning video editing using modern software. Last time I did that was on something like this. During the lull in flying, I've been good, keeping up with studies, working on my IFR, reading the cars and aims. But there's only so much of this and this and, well, this that you can put up with sitting at home. The weather was warming up, days are getting longer, time for those $100 hamburgers. The siren call of the skies was overwhelming. Well, something like that. I'm also sure that, like some of you, my internet surfing included visiting aircraft for sale websites and taking a look at all the pretty pictures. I really shouldn't be looking at planes, but, you know, market research. How could it hurt? I saw a lot of gorgeous planes. There were a few somewhere between fixer-upper and some assembly required. I saw some interesting panel layouts from minimalist to cutting edge. I think this Piper wants to be a Cirrus. And then I saw this one, and I fell in love. I know. This is way too much plane for a low-time PPL. And you're right. But look at that panel. My original plan was to buy part of a 172 or a Cherokee or something like that and learn the ownership side from the other owners. Presumably they would know what they're doing. Except the market didn't quite work out that way. I saw a couple of planes and they just didn't feel right. They looked like I was going to outgrow them, in a year or two. Most of them weren't anywhere near IFR. I'm also in my mid-50s, and that comes with a couple of issues. The first, rumor has it, is more maturity and better judgment. Supposedly, I have a better grasp on what I can handle. But it also comes with a sense of urgency. I can't just wait 10 or 15 years and go, well, I'll buy it someday. And I'm also not going to be going on an ATPL program and do all my, pro flying on other people's planes. Finally, it comes with the financial options that a 25-year-old typically wouldn't have. Although buying an aircraft isn't exactly chump change for me either, it's not going to have me eating more KD. So back to the plane. Oh, just look at that. Sorry. Without going into a long, laborious list of the pros and cons and so forth, suffice it to say, I spent some time thinking about it and went, okay, this isn't the dumbest thing that I could possibly do. Aircraft valuation is an incredibly nebulous concept. I studied economics, so for me, it's about what people value. And it boggles me sometimes what different people value as far as looks, performance, panel, age of the aircraft, condition, or even, the history of the aircraft. And every used aircraft comes with a history. More on that soon. So at this point, I had a number in my head. So I decided to jump in the car, drive a couple of hours to where... Okay, debate time. I'm about to get all anthropomorphic about half a ton of aluminum, glass, plastic, rubber, okay, and call it a she. Okay. For most people, not a big issue in any case. There's no sexism here. I have a car, it's a she. I have a motorcycle and a pickup truck, they're both he's. They all have names. This is just the way I am. The plane is definitely a she. Back to the story. So not knowing the owner, I didn't do a whole lot of filming when I was down there, but I did do as good an inspection as I could do. We didn't actually fly the plane, I'll get to that in a second. But we had a good conversation about the condition of the aircraft, and I did a quick film of a walk around towards the end. I asked a lot of questions, he gave me a lot of information, I was satisfied with that. The only big issue was that it was due for its prop overhaul soon. Otherwise, anything else would be caught by the pre-inspection. The owner agreed to sell with a fresh annual, a couple of maintenance issues corrected, and IFR certification. And he threw a Bose headset in with the deal too. Not bad. He also agreed to deliver the aircraft, at my expense, to my home base where I could have the pre-buy inspection done. Purchasing an aircraft is a complex process, and risks seem to lurk at every corner. But there's a lot of resources and a lot of people who are there and ready to help if you just ask. In specific, the COPA website right here has a lot of information on what you should have on pre-buy inspections in the process of purchasing an aircraft. Check them out. I mentioned that every aircraft comes with a history, and this one's no exception. The aircraft was built in 1977. It was sold into the US market, and the last owner was in California. So in addition to checking the Canadian tail number for damage history, liens, and that sort of thing, I also checked the old November tail number from the States for the same things. I also wanted to see if it was possibly used as a school plane. The hours on it are pretty low, fairly consistent with private ownership, but you never know. In any case, it wasn't a break-or-break item. One of the things you normally do before you buy is fly. Fly before you buy. I did not do this for two reasons. The first of which is that I don't know from a 172, so it would have been very hard for me to personally evaluate the aircraft as far as how well it flew. And to be honest, I'm going to trust my AME to make sure that it works properly and flies correctly. So that being done, all I did was I sat in the aircraft and I applied the Top Gear standard. Is this a nice place to sit? Could I sit here for 3 or 4 hours on a cross country? And the answer is, especially considering the type of aircraft, an absolute yes. It has the most room, it's the most comfortable in its class. It's the little SUV of the aviation world. That said, there were some condition issues that I made note of. I didn't think they were particularly serious, but I was definitely going to ask the AME about them. Particularly, there was a lot of black staining underneath the wings of the aircraft. I'll go into that in part 2 of this. So moving on to the legal bits of purchasing an aircraft. Like many other big ticket items, making an offer to purchase on an aircraft should come with some conditions. 1, that the plane be delivered in as described condition with nothing removed. Sounds simple, but it's important. 2, that it's delivered with all available logs and records. 3, the plane is free of all liens and encumbrances. And last, that final sale is subject to a satisfactory inspection. Now in this case, I personally checked for liens and encumbrances on the aircraft, both in Canada and the United States. There are services that can do this for relatively little cost. As for the other items, a quick check on arrival to make sure the aircraft is as described and as last seen and everything was there, it was good. And the AME is going to run through all of the records anyway to make sure that the maintenance records are up to date and it matches the condition of the actual aircraft. So at this point, I made an offer. And after a couple of emails back and forth, we came to acceptable terms. All of this took about 6 weeks, so it's not a really quick process. So thanks for joining me on my inaugural episode. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be moving on with the story of the aircraft when it finally arrived, and we'll actually get up into the air and start flying, which is what everybody's looking forward to, right? Yes, we'll have all of those pretty videos shortly. And now we're going to move on to tips and tricks. Here we go. So for the inaugural segment on tips and tricks, I wanted to introduce you to your new best friend. Velcro. This stuff is amazingly useful for a whole bunch of things. One of the first things I did was to use it to put a little cup on my whiteboard here when I was setting up the studio. Super easy, works like a charm. And look at that, I'm an artist. Not. But seriously, this stuff is amazingly useful. And we'll get into the cockpit in a second. We'll find out two particularly good uses for it. The first thing that I have to mention is that when you buy it, it comes in sort of two different flavors. I mean, you can get these things in circles and squares and pre-cut stuff for specific things, but you can pick this stuff at fabric stores or supply stores, probably dollar stores as well, I don't know, and definitely online. And you can get it in either fabric versions or with this adhesive backing. Okay, so you just peel and stick. You've got a hook side and kind of a fuzzy soft side. So I'm just going to call them the hooks and soft. And what you do is if you need to attach something to something else, you put the soft side on the surface that you're mounting whatever it is to, and the hook side on the thing you're mounting to that surface. But there's also the fabric side. It's particularly useful. So this is 2-inch wide, fabric backed Velcro. It's exactly the same as the 1-inch stuff. And you cut them into little strips. We do this in the audiovisual world all the time. Let's say you wanted to tie up the power cord for whatever reason. Well, you usually pull it apart, okay? You put the soft end here. And now what you can do is wrap this around and you have yourself an instant cable management tool. And you can make as many of these things as you want. So quickly moving into the cockpit, this is how I attach my audio recorder to the dash of the Beech. So 2 strips on the dash there, attached to the Velcro that's on the underside of the audio recorder, and nice and secure. And now we use that same strap technique that I used earlier on to secure the power cord for my plug-in for my iPad. And the key here is to make sure that the cable only goes where you want it. Nice and safe, nice and secure. And finally, here's an example of how to secure a cable to a surface. So I've attached a couple of strips of the adhesive-backed soft side of the Velcro already to the underside of my dash. It's about 1-inch wide surface to mount that to. And then I just sandwich the cable between that and a tiny strip of the hook side fabric back part. So that's why you need kind of both. And that keeps the cable out of the way and allows me to run power from the car charger that's in the center column of the aircraft up the side stanchion of the aircraft into where my cameras and my audio recorder are. We'll get a little more into that when I cover camera placement in a future episode. And now it's time for your in-flight entertainment. If you have a favorite tip, trick, or joke you'd like to share with us and like to see on a future episode, we'd love to hear from you. And of course, any comments you might have on making this show better, we'd also like to hear about. And finally, if you've enjoyed watching this, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks. Thanks for joining me on this first episode of my story. Hope you enjoyed it. We look forward to seeing you next time. You're Flying with Tom T. See you up there.